was for the, check signing authority, so
Yeah.
we got that taken care of, and now.
But I'm worried that we said you're not paying bills? You just
Those
didn't
are
pay them?
getting paid tomorrow. All bills are being paid tomorrow.
Probably
Unfortunately,
So,
yeah,
and
he was out 5 weeks.
And Kim did allow me with cross-training to get all of the police stuff under control. Nobody has an expectation that you're gonna be in the hospital for 25 days over 2 stays in that length of time. So she allowed me to get everything under control with the police department, and then we would start working on, all of the stuff for the town. I do like vendor coding and general ledger coding, things like that. But as far as the writing of the checks and the general ledger and inputting everything into the computer, she is the only one that has access to that at this time. But that training is happening. So, had she not gotten back this week, I think that's when we really would have needed to go, okay, we have to do something. Whether it's handwriting checks, what have you, I don't know how, and then she'd have to play catch up to get those all into the system and print out dummy checks, what have you. I don't know how all of that would have worked, but I think that that's where we would have been at this week. Today she was in for about 4 hours, maybe 4.5, planning on being in tomorrow. Today she got through emails and any email invoices and things like that came. She printed those out, I got them coded, things like that. We got things grouped together, and those are all going to be written tomorrow and sent out.
So you're gonna work with her tomorrow on that?
Yes,
So,
but she will probably primarily do it just to hasten the make it faster.
but you're gonna see how it
Yep,
operates.
Yep.
Now, there's other things that you haven't got to yet. Do you know how many of those things that you haven't even been exposed to yet? Because of
oh,
this
there's
thing?
so many things, because of, like you would say during the budget workshop or during the last meeting, Kim has a formula for that,
Yep.
Kim has this for that. I don't get any of that information at this time. She has set me up with the elections, so I went to a treasurer's meeting where we were talking about, taxes. And so not elections, I'm sorry, taxes. And so now I am able to get into the system to do all of the receipting and things like that with taxes. And anything that would need to be done with that, it's just a matter of knowing what to do and how to do it. So those are all things that are gonna happen in this training now over, now that she's back and hopefully will stay back. We're gonna focus on getting me up to speed with some of the stuff with her job
Okay, but
and
then-
so forth.
And we also have to consider Leslie.
Yes, and that's really, I mean, if you talk about cross-training
Backing
So-
up.
outside of, we're talking about basically the 3 people in the office.
Well, with Leslie,
So,
that is something that I don't know how that's going to have to be addressed. But my understanding is that she and I have to be completely separate because of the police clerk and the court clerk. So any cross-training that would go on there, that would simply be her and Kim.
And you're aware of that issue, correct?
Because my
Well,
understanding
it's-
is that,
Well,
Oh, well, we didn't comply with it for how many years with Chris?
I think there's other,
with Chris having 2 hats on and then.
Oh, I see, having a designated clerk for the court.
Yes.
I don't foresee, and it's not even part of Leslie's contract, that you would have to back up Kim or Jean on any of their duties.
No, but I'm worried about who's gonna back Leslie up.
Oh, I see.
She's the one
When
who's-
she's out, what do you and Dan do?
And so that street really does go both
Fumble
ways.
and stumble like we did
Right.
July and August.
Right, so let's not allow that to be our only option moving forward.
Well, what's the answer though?
Well, that's what we're saying, yeah, then it would have to be Kim, or on a temporary basis, could it be Jean?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think we should,
I
Put a plan
think
in
with the
place.
court, it's a little more flexible, because
2 months in too.
there are times where the court will simply adjourn matters because they can't handle them on the same night as it was originally scheduled. Whether the docket gets too long or what have you. And there is no right to a speedy trial or anything in municipal court, so that's never really been an issue before. But you're right, if we had to buy time, if something went wrong with Leslie, she was out hospitalized for
3 weeks.
6 weeks, or,
Yeah,
you know, you can only postpone or adjourn for so long.
Well, and people are paying their fines online, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding that the reason there hasn't been a treasurer's report is because there are payments that were made online that have not made it to a spreadsheet from the court clerk to the town clerk to balance against the bank statement. So some of those payments that have been received have not been recorded on a spreadsheet yet. So when a payment comes in, my understanding, and it's very truncated, is that I pay online, then Leslie gets a notification via email to approve or, decline that payment. So say they paid the wrong amount, or they paid the wrong municipality, something like that, then she would decline that payment. Or she can put in, hey, is this a village, are you guys waiting for a payment for this amount for the village? And she's like, yeah, and so then Leslie can put their code in, and it'll get transferred to the village. Or she approves it. Then, over at the entity, the all paid that they pay online to, then that trickles through to us in the more form of, going through the clearinghouse and getting a direct deposit into our account. So, not all of those payments that have been made online have been put on a spreadsheet to balance with the monthly bank statement. And that's what Kim and Leslie have been trying to work towards, is getting all those payments on that spreadsheet, which Leslie does that piece of it, and then she gives the spreadsheet to Kim, and Kim makes sure it balances with, you know, that all of those dollar amounts are on there, they're only on there one time, blah, blah, blah.
and that used to be done by.
That used to be
Joanne?
done by Joanne, because Chris said, I'm not doing anything with money. So Joanne did it for her, even though it was Chris's task as court clerk. Joanne did it as a courtesy to Chris, but it was Chris's responsibility for those cash sheets to be accurate with. If they paid one
So-
fine, it was on their one
When
time.
Chris helped train Leslie, she couldn't have trained her on that part, because Chris never did it.
Right, and then, I don't know what kind of training happened with Joanne on that.
Because Joanne was already gone when Leslie started as well, I think.
I think there was maybe a day or so
Right.
that overlap there, and Joanne might have not even been working, her retirement date might have been after her official last day, I don't know. But, so I worked with Leslie last week, not understanding the spreadsheet, but just making sure that anybody that was in those direct deposits was on the spreadsheet. But anyway, regardless, that is a task that, once I get a citation from the police department and I enter that into the records and I give it to Leslie to do her part, I am supposedly no longer allowed to see that citation.
Well, what happens on court nights when people line up at the window and pay you with their card?
Well, I don't know, but that's exactly what happens. But like, some
Because
people
Leslie
wanna-
wouldn't know what payments were processed back here to put on her spreadsheet that she gets from the online
Oh,
payments.
no, all those receipts go into a envelope for her, and then
Oh,
she takes them the
okay.
next day to balance them.
Okay.
Yep, and so, like,
How do
someone
they
gets put on a
balance it?
payment plan, and they call me to make a payment. If they don't know their dollar amount, and they don't know what their citation number is, I can't accept that payment from them, cause we accept them over the phone too. And we put the stuff into, they could do it themselves, but they call and go, can you just help me with this? And so we're allowed to do that. But if they're on a payment plan, or we don't have access to what that payment plan is.
Mhm.
Whereas before, you could, like Kim could just go and look it up and stuff. So I don't know, I mean, that's all a work in progress to get that balance out. Because right now, because August, Leslie was new, it was catch up and getting things approved. So getting things onto these cash sheets, Leslie's gotta get everybody just on there once. You know, they can't be on two different payment dates, they can't be in there two times, things like that. and balance with Kim's book, so we can get a treasurer's report for next month, so they're working on that. So, I don't know where, like, how we're gonna facilitate a cross-training with her, because I'm not supposed to see that stuff anymore.
Well, it'd be with Kim then,
Yeah,
I mean, somebody, right, I mean, you're just trying to prevent something like.
Well, Kim knows what she needs from Leslie, so that would be the obvious choice.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you said, now you've been here, is it 2 months now?
since the beginning of August.
Beginning of
August,
August.
September.
August, September, so we got 3 months in,
Mhm.
so by the time we get into January, 5 months in, you would hope by January, all the stuff that you're gonna be responsible for, you and I'll have a handle on that. Leslie the same way, okay, I think then, maybe we have a meeting with, 3 of you
Mhm.
and the board, and we fair through that part, because we can't get caught, I mean, Leslie could get in a car accident tonight,
Right,
alright, and she's gone a month,
Right,
what do we do? Shut her down? Yeah, you did first time, but not that we did, alright.
This has been a discussion before I was ever on the board.
Right.
Kim has always said, well, there's no one here who can do what I can do.
yeah,
I'm like, well, that's a problem. I mean,
Mhm.
at least to help, or.
right.
Yeah, and that's, and again, that's part of the reason
And I would,
why we have a deputy now that's full-time. And that's solving 3/4 of the initial problem, because we didn't have that option before.
But,
Yeah.
yes, but I still think you
Joint
need to be
work so
trained
much.
in all facets of Kim's
Mhm.
job and have all the passwords.
that's what deputy means, right?
well, and
By law, yes.
And that's where too, when it starts talking about working remotely and stuff, right now, I am on a network with the police, so I have access to the police files, they have, you know what I mean? I can go into that and do reports and things like that, and put documents into everything that all the officers can see. Right now, Kim's stuff is on her computer, my stuff is on my computer, that whether we have the passwords or our 2 machines are networked in a sense where we both have access to the bill paying, the accounts payable, we both have access to, the general ledger, those kinds of things. I don't know how we wanna approach that, so those are things that have to be discussed and figured out. I would hesitate to say by January 1st, only because of having to play all this catch up right now, between budget and tax season.
Right.
I would look at more after
And then
tax.
election coming up,
March,
Yeah.
so I would say maybe next July, August.
Yeah, but certainly to make this portion of my job duties take front line now, because I'm comfortable with the police stuff, things in that realm are going well, I know what I'm doing now. And if I don't, they're here every day to ask that question, and so forth.
And I think
But
you have
keep
to
this.
be, yeah, I think
Yep.
you have to make a cognitive effort on cross-training.
Yep, you have to set times, you have
Yeah.
to set time aside to
Because
do
it will
that.
take a little longer,
Yep,
right?
Yeah.
But we are elementary stuck with, there's 3 people,
mhm,
okay?
Yeah.
That's what we got to work with. It's not like you can
Yeah.
grab a DPW guy or a police
Yeah.
guy or a temp.
Right.
Okay, not to say that may not at some time have, some help, whatever that may be, for 10 hours a week or 15, whatever. That's still an option that we'll know when we get there,
Right.
if it's needed. But we would not have had a chance even discussing this if we didn't go, to the full-time deputy. Because if we didn't have that, we weren't gonna get there. We couldn't, we wouldn't have it.
So let's say you got ill, who gets to go into the police department stuff?
the guys know how to do everything but a few little report things that are kind of fluff for them. They can transmit citations, they can send stuff to the DA, they can send off the stuff to the labs, the state labs, things like that. Yeah, because they picked all of that up from the time that Chris was gone until I started. Were they glad when I got trained on it and they didn't have to do it anymore? Absolutely, because that then freed them up for on the road, their reports, stuff like that. So yes, that would just revert back to them.
So we think in February then, we should have a sit down to discuss.
At least get pointed in the right direction, okay?
Well, I think you guys are gonna have the same issue with the chief in his contract, you're gonna have a similar issue with her contract. And if there's gonna be a change, that has to be documented somehow. Cause you're at your limit already.
Just probably after tonight.
Yeah.
Cause I can only accumulate 40 at a time, and right now I can't take any time off.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only thing is with Kim out, I can't take any time off. So it would be my expectation that the board would be understanding of that and allow me to go over that amount, you know, what have you. Otherwise, it's, you know, I don't wanna close it up, cause that's not my thing.
Can't we just pay her out? I mean, isn't that one of the other options, you can pay it
On
out
the
or?
contract, I believe that might be an option.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kim did the last 3 years
yeah.
because.
But I think we'd have to do it now when she gets 40 hours.
If that's what she.
For her,
That's what-
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
you're
That
kinda,
would be the carryover.
unfortunately, you don't really have a lot of other options
Right.
right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if we don't allow me to go over 40 hours, we can put so much time in to the next pay period or something like that, into my next paycheck. I'm flexible, it doesn't matter to me. But,
Okay, alright, let's move on. Oh, you just touched on working remotely, you
yeah,
just touched on it. And you had kind of mentioned that email is one thing that Kim could do.
yeah, there's very few things that we can do remotely because there's so much other stuff, supporting documents, supporting files that have to go with it. Even payroll, for instance, there's so many other things that go with that. But just to check email, there are other municipalities, obviously, that had worked remotely back and forth during COVID, where they would have a laptop that would be at work, be at home, that kind of thing. There are programs out there that allow that. In my previous jobs, I would always just VPN, and then I was basically on my employer's network. Well, we don't have a network, so that's a little bit different. We'd have to talk with our IT guy on how that works, but there's programs out there that allow you to securely access stuff. But she could check her email, and then if there's, or I could, whoever, you know, could check their email at least. Probably couldn't do a lot more than that, but at least it would be like,
That's helpful
right,
Well, if we can, is
Can't-
your email different than
can't you
ours?
just check your email right now?
Cause we all check
We don't think.
ours.
Securance, you have to have outside connection somehow. Like when I'm at home and I wanna log in to see my work email, I have to go through a separate securance
Yeah.
site.
That's a VPN.
Right.
Yes, yes. And then,
My
I
wife
think,
does the same thing, cause it's all
Yeah.
through the federal government,
I,
and
Right.
it's
we
protecting
can
us,
too, but
yeah, it's basically, it's.
but there could be a security issue with the stuff that she would potentially be doing there, possible. That's
Well-
an IT question, you know.
Yeah.
and in
Email
hindsight,
that-
I'm thinking you got a new computer when you started and should that have been a laptop, you know?
I don't think
oh,
generally Kim does email from home.
no. And who expects to be sick for that long? But where should it be in that situation? I mean, you can only sit in that hospital chair and you wanna heal. I'm not saying that
Right.
somebody should be working remotely in her situation, but I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work. I know that she was thinking about work, that I feel good for a half an hour. I'm gonna check some emails. I'll forward this invoice to Jean. I'll forward this invoice to Jean or say, hey Jean, can you get this to Jim or can you send this on to, you know,
Right.
or respond to an email from whatever, you know, that kind of thing. You're doing it for 15 minutes, what have you. But to fully work remote, not an option. But I know one clerk, the program that they have only costs them $10 a month. So to have $120 a year, to have that as an option might not be a bad thing. Chief said he's got 2 laptops that are not compatible to be in squads anymore. Kim, there is a laptop in the office. I don't know if any of those 3 would be compatible to a program. But again, $120 for the year to have that as a possibility should the situation arise might not be a bad thought.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts on that?
So we wanna schedule a separate meeting after the new year?
I'm thinking February is what I put on my calendar. By then,
So to discuss the chief's contract, to
No,
discuss
that would be the
her
3.
contract,
the three
Well,
officers.
That's
that's
the cross training.
Cross training.
Cross training, not the
Yeah.
contract, yeah.
That one we do before. February, by then, I would think Leslie and you would be totally ingrained into what all your job responsibilities are. And then that'd be a good time to see where the disconnects are, where the opportunities to cross-train are, and even where they're possible. Because like you said, that some of them may not, be.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be you, it would be kid, that's why it has to be all three, you know. And hopefully by then, you know, we're done all the budgets and all the holidays stuff and tax stuff, you know, before the election,
Yeah,
you know, and
I
that,
won't know that stuff yet, first I haven't experienced it.
okay, let's move on. Attorney's report,
Okay.
ordinances.
Yes, first ordinance 2021-8. It's an ordinance creating 2.35.095 blood test fee. It reads, the town board of the town of East Troy, Walworth County, Wisconsin, is hereby ordained that section 2.35.095 of the town of East Troy municipal code is hereby created as follows. Section 2.35.095 blood test fee. 1. Pursuant to statute section 814.65 sub 4M, the municipal court shall also impose blood test fees pursuant to the following requirements and limitations. Sub A, except as provided in paragraph sub D, if a defendant is required to appear in municipal court, in addition to any forfeiture, costs, fees, or surcharges it imposes, the municipal court shall impose and collect from the defendant any costs charged to or paid by a law enforcement agency for the withdrawal of the defendant's blood, if the court finds that the defendant violated a local ordinance in conformity with state statute sections 23.33 sub 4C, 30.681, 346.63, or 350.101. Sub B, except as provided for in paragraph sub D, if at any time the court finds a defendant committed the violation, the law enforcement agency has not paid or been charged with the cost of withdrawing the defendant's blood, if at the time, the court shall impose and collect the costs the law enforcement agency reasonably expects to be charged for the withdrawal, based upon current charges for this procedure. Sub C, the court shall distribute the amounts it collects under this subsection to the law enforcement agency that requested the blood withdrawal. Sub D, the court may not impose on the defendant any cost for an alternative test provided free of charge as described in state statute section 343.305 sub 4. 2. Severability. If any of the provisions of this ordinance, if any provision of the ordinance is invalid or unconstitutional, or if the application of this ordinance to any person or circumstances is invalid or unconstitutional, such invalidity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the above provisions or applications of this ordinance, which can be given effect without the invalid or unconstitutional provisions or its applications. 3. This ordinance shall take effect upon its proper passage and publication as may be required by law. So I need a waiver of the second reading.
I'll make a
first.
motion that we waive the second reading of ordinance 2021-8.
I'll second.
Chad second, and motion to waive the second reading, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None.
So my only question was, only if they're found guilty, do they
Correct.
pay?
Correct.
All right, now we need a motion to approve the ordinance as well.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2021-8, an ordinance creating 2.35.09 blood test fee.
095.
095, my apologies.
All right, we have a motion to approve.
One second.
Michelle second, any discussion? On the motion to approve ordinance 2021-8, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? None.
Next item, ordinance number 2021-9. An ordinance creating 10.80.025 blood test fee. It reads, 1, the town board of the town of East Troy, Walworth County, Wisconsin is hereby ordained that section 10.80.025 of the town of East Troy Municipal Code is hereby created as follows. Section 10.80.025 blood test fee. 1, pursuant to section, actually it's the same language as the last one, but pursuant to section 814.65 sub 4M, the municipal court shall also impose blood test fees pursuant to the following requirements and limitations. Sub A, except as provided in paragraph sub D, if a defendant is required to appear in municipal court, in addition to any forfeiture, costs, fees, or surcharges it imposes, the municipal court shall impose and collect from the defendant any costs charged to or paid by a law enforcement agency for the withdrawal of the defendant's blood, if the court finds that the defendant violated a local ordinance in conformity with state statute sections 23.33 sub 4C, 30.681, 346.63, or 350.101. Sub B is except as provided for in paragraph sub D, if at the time the court finds the defendant committed the violation, the law enforcement agency has not paid or been charged with the cost of withdrawing the defendant's blood, the court shall impose and collect the costs the law enforcement agency reasonably expects to be charged for the withdrawal based upon the current charges for this procedure. Sub C, the court shall distribute the amounts it collects under the subsection to the law enforcement agency that requested the blood withdrawal. Sub D, the court may not impose on the defendant any cost for an alternative test provided free of charge as described in section 343.305 sub 4. 2, severability, if any provision of this ordinance is invalid or unconstitutional, or if the application of this ordinance to any person or circumstance is invalid or unconstitutional, such invalidity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the above provisions or applications of this ordinance, which can be given effect without the invalid or unconstitutional provisions or its applications. 3, this ordinance shall take effect upon its proper passage and publication as may be required by law. I'll need a waiver of second reading, but the language is identical because section 2.35 deals with municipal court procedures and what a municipal court has authority to do. Section 10 talks about fees that can be charged. So it had to go in 2 separate places.
All right, I make a motion that we waive the second reading of ordinance 2021-9.
A second?
Michelle, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? None.
That was just a waiver of second
All
reading.
right, approved.
So I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2021-9, an ordinance creating 10.80.025 blood test fee as written.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
She has a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None.
Item C, ordinance 2021-10, an ordinance amending chapter 10.05.030 sub 2 of the town of East Troy Municipal Code. The town board of the town of East Troy, Walworth County, Wisconsin is hereby ordained as follows. 1, that section 10.05.030 sub 2 is amended to read. Sub 2, penalties. Any person violating this section shall forfeit, and the new language is $200. The person's operating privileges, new language, may also be suspended for 3 months upon, new language, a first offense conviction, but a suspension will be mandatory for second and subsequent offenses within 12 months that involve a motor vehicle. 2, all italicized language is new. Any section of this ordinance not modified by italicized language remains unchanged. 3, this ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as provided by law. This deals with, underage or absolute sobriety tickets. Our prior ordinance said, I believe it said $50, when the fine is now $200, and then it didn't have the language in there about mandatory suspensions that the law has in it now.
So the law changes on that.
Yes, and it's been changed for a while, but until you go back and look at other sections of the code,
You didn't see it.
I didn't see that this update was required until I went back and looked at section 10.05.
Okay,
So I need a
make
second
motion
reading.
that we, waive the second reading of ordinance number 2021-10.
all right, we have a second?
I'll second.
She had a second, discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
I
Aye, opposed? None,
make a motion to approve ordinance number 2021-10 and ordinance amending the section 10.05.030 2 of the Town of East Troy Municipal Code.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2021-10, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? None,
Last one is ordinance 21-11. An ordinance amending section 2.35.090 of the Town of East Troy Municipal Code. It reads, the town board of the Town of East Troy, Walworth County, Wisconsin, does hereby ordain as follows. 1, that section 2.35.090 is amended to read, the municipal judge may also enter an award of restitution when authorized by statute in an amount not to exceed, the new language is $10,000. 2, all italicized language is new. Any section of this ordinance not modified by italicized language remains unchanged. 3, this ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as provided by law. The old ordinance said $5,000, which was the old small claims court, dollar jurisdictional limit that was raised to 10,000, and the municipal court follows the small claims court, jurisdiction.
So you came across this in your
When I was back at 2.35, what have you, so I need a waiver.
I'm gonna make a motion to waive the second reading of ordinance number 2021-11.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second to waive the second reading of ordinance 2021-11. Any discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None.